me that BTI is a wonderful institution. Your research opens exciting possibilities, and your discoveries continue to amaze and contribute important knowledge for the future. As I learn, I have also developed a deep appreciation for the enormous importance of plants to human life and to the well-being of our planet. Late in 2022, once I could visit BTI in person and spend time with several of you, I became particularly interested in translational science. The challenges to feed humanity, to develop new medicines, and to protect the environment have motivated my wife and me to support the work you do by taking it one step further, giving your discoveries the possibility to reach their full potential, to change human life, inspired by your vision to enable plants to help humanity. Project Volt was designed to expand BTI's capability to convert as many as possible of your great discoveries into practical real-world applications. Now, as BTI's 100th birthday year begins, we feel it is equally important to make a statement. So here is our gift, Project First Million. Excited that with a new president and renewed energy, BTI is launching a campaign to expand its endowment, we are happy to offer a hand with its first phase. The goal of Project First Million is to encourage every person in the Institute to reach out to their friends, professional associates, and organizations they know. By broadly communicating to your networks in order to highlight the bright future you envision for BTI, you can offer them the opportunity to be partners in your success with a donation to the Institute's endowment. Project First Million is a one-to-one matching campaign to double the results of your success. No amount is too small. Everyone in the Institute is able to contribute. I have done a little math, and I believe it is very possible for the Institute's associates and directors, through their networks, to collectively attain the desired impact of this program. You will hear more about it later. Let me close by congratulating you on the 100th anniversary and wishing you an even more wonderful century ahead. Happy birthday, Boyce Thompson Institute.
Again, thanking Rob for his generosity. It's folks like him, individuals, foundations, other folks that have really sustained BTI. Without their generosity, we wouldn't be here to celebrate this 100th anniversary. So thank you very much, Rob. What I'm going to do a couple of things. I just want to quickly go through a few things that were going on in 1924. Just take a look back to the year when we started, just to see what the world was looking a little bit like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the time capsule. And I'm going to focus, I can't focus on everything that's going in there. You'll learn more about that later. But I'm going to talk about just two examples of the type of things that are going in there and why I think they're important. So let me start with what was going on in 1924. And I'm going to, sorry, I got to put on my glasses so I can read my speech here. What was life like in 1924 when BTI was founded? The US had 48 states. Let's see if I can get this to work. Advanced thing. Sorry. Calvin Coolidge was the 30th president, and he gave the first ever radio broadcast from the White House. Babe Ruth, the baseball player, was the most famous American athlete at the time. Lenin died, and Jimmy Carter, the 39th US president, was born. I think he's getting close to his 100th birthday right now as well, if he's not already 100. The very first Winter Olympics were held in Chamonix, France. Prohibition was 2 years old. Despite that fact, Americans drank 60 to 70% more in 1924 than they did when alcohol was made illegal 2 years earlier. In May of 1924, in all of its wisdom, that's sarcasm, the US passes the Asian Exclusion Act, banning all Asian immigration to the United States. This just a few years after Japan had been our ally in World War I. Imagine what a negative impact it would have been to BTI science if we had kept such a law on the books. I thought things were strange now. Looking back, 1924 also looks a little like a pretty strange time. I will also note that in 1924, in most US cities, people were transported around in small electric buses, despite the fact that gas was 15 cents a gallon. Maybe it's too bad that we gave up, since it's a switch that we're trying to do now 100 years later. Also, a couple more comments just quickly on the history side. I wanted to see what the biggest science headline was from the day that the Institute was founded in September of 1924. And the best one I could find was a New York Times science headline that said, quote, "Unknown fossils found in Mongolia." This turned out later to be understood that these were fossilized remains of the oldest known human ancestors at the time. Proof that the human race began somewhere in Africa, what many views as a somewhat shocking discovery back in 1924. Bear with me, just a couple more history ones, and then I'll get to the science part. Finally, as far as other science goes, in 1924, a Swedish physicist, Carl Sigenbahn, was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the invention for X-ray spectroscopy, and a Dutch medical doctor, Willem Einthoven, won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for the discovery of the electrocardiogram, both things that we are still using one way or another 100 years later. In 1924, the American Society for Plant Biologists was founded. Botany, a field that basically predates written history, had been around pretty much as long as humans, yet the first independent plant science research institute was not founded until 1924 when Boyce Thompson was founded. We all know that BTI has been doing amazing science for the past 100 years. You'll hear a lot more about this as the centennial year progresses. Like Sylvia mentioned, I personally have been blessed to be able to witness about a quarter of a century of that right here at BTI in one role or another. Okay, so now moving on to the time capsule part today. What do we put in this to capture what BTI is really all about? Like I said, I'm not going to go everything that's going in here, but I will highlight just a few examples. One is a discovery, and then the other is one that I think is perhaps more important. I'll get to that in just a second. This past week, Eric Richards and I have been going over what we're calling, quote, decades of discovery for an event we are highlighting later next month. As we have gone over the history of the past 100 years, it has been a very interesting exercise. Sure, we're seeing groundbreaking type discoveries that pop up and other important events that mark the history, the move to Cornell and our affiliation with the university, for example. As you would expect, we also see BTI science benefit from big things happening in science in general. Over the years, the discovery of recombinant DNA technology in the 70s, for example, or new genome sequencing technology, or things like CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing as a more recent example of something that really shaking the science world up. And now let me talk about the two examples that I want to talk about that's going in the capsule. The first one I have to tell you about because I always pick ones from translational science, and I have a show and tell item for that one. Some of you have seen this before. It's a little mock-up of a vaccine. This is the Newcastle disease vaccine that was, and it says, if you look at it on here, it says one of these world's first plant-made vaccine license, Newcastle disease virus, January 27th, 2006. Just so you understand what this one was, this is in 2006 is a culmination of a project that went on for probably more than a decade in developing plant-made vaccines. And it involved a number of different labs here at BTI, including Charlie Aronson's lab, who you remember who was the president of BTI when I first came to the Institute, Hugh Mason, who worked closely with Charlie, but also Joyce Van Eck had a big part in that project. And so it's a typical example of, you've got this discovery that pops up in 2006, but it's really a culmination of a lot of work that went in for decades. So when we're making our timeline, Eric and I come up with our decades of discovery timeline. It's really difficult to sort of pinpoint those things because it's a process that's going on for 100 years as science progresses. But like I said, there are things like that that do sort of mark different times. So that's my discovery one. But like I said, scientific discovery works like this. It's a methodical and most times slow process that unfolds over years and years of hard work. It's difficult to find a symbol to put in a time capsule like this that represents all that work. But what many folks did, and you'll see in some of the slides that are showing some of the photographs that are going into the time capsule, but what they did was, which I think was perfect, was they put in pictures of the people that did all this work. They put in photos of lab groups that have been like families for several generations of BTI scientists and the wonderful people that have supported these scientists over the years. In my opinion, my humble opinion, this is really what I think BTI has been and is all about. In retrospect, looking back at the last 100 years, what BTI has produced is an amazing group of people that have gone out and cultivated the fields of plant biology and the larger fields of the life sciences and had impacts on other fields of work and places all around the globe. I'm looking forward to a great 2024 of retrospection and thinking forward to about what the next 100 years of BTI science will bring. Thanks everyone for your contribution to these time capsules, and thanks for your attention. Oh, I didn't mean to leave Jim Carter's picture up there, sorry. I think I'm supposed to tell everybody that the next thing we're going to do is I think we're going to move to the atrium to actually have a toast and to take a look at the time capsule and maybe put it in the ground. Is that right? That's what Paula told me to do. So we're all going to move out to the atrium now. All right, thanks.